Welcome to Urban Legend Crypto. As always, I got Brett Jenny here, and we are going to talk everything crypto as it pertains to today. What's your ideas?
Well, we were conversing on the phone this past week over the government, as in the U.S. government, and our fondness for Binance.
I got no fondness
CZ.
for Binance.
Yeah, so just a lot of confusion overall. Same thing with Coinbase. Coinbase is, just so people kind of have a reference of what we're talking about. A lot of these exchanges, specifically Coinbase in this one, has gone to the U.S. government and gone to the SEC and said, what are the rules that you want us to follow by? What is the guidance here that you need us to set things up so that we know the routine and the protocol of what you're looking for, so we know we're compliant? And the long and short of it is, we've told them things 3 or 4 years ago, or I should say more like 2017, 2018. We've told them one thing and then never really given them clarity. And now coming on them saying, well, you've done all these things wrong and you're filing these things illegally. And it's simply because they were waiting for them to have clarity on something, and they never came back to them on anything. So that was kind of their game, right? Which is, if we don't tell you exactly what your guidelines are, then realistically, you're not going to be able to follow those guidelines. So it's kind of like, if you don't want someone to shoot themselves, don't give them the gun and the bullet. And that's what the government was doing.
Well, here's how I see it, man. Number one, we've got a problem of definitions. See, right now, there are no exact definitions. There are certain words that pertain to cryptocurrency. They could mean 3 or 4 things. Now,
that's the problem.
What I think is going on is there's a concerted effort by the SEC to take down cryptocurrency in the US and the world later, right? But they're going to make it so damn hard for these exchanges to be able to do business here in the US that at the end of the day, it will be prohibited in their balance books to be able to be in all 50 states following the regulations that need to be followed, that they're being proposed. But Europe is way ahead of us. They've already passed a bunch of legislation trying to define some of these terms, trying to get the regulations done. Coinbase, for example, they've been actively asking the SEC to please give them working definitions, right? Working guidelines, so that way they can stay compliant. And one of the messed up things about this is they're using their attempts to stay compliant against them right now.
That's what I was trying to say before. Exactly, which is, we're going to give you, a company comes to you and says, we're looking to you, the SEC and the government, to give us the guidelines that we need to follow so that we're compliant and we're within the laws. And the SEC and the government says, well, we don't really have any guidelines. We have yet to draw up those guidelines, but we're going to use them against you, even though we're not giving you any guidance. So you're coming to somebody asking, hey, how do I handle this situation? Well, hold on. We'll get back to you on how we're going to handle that situation. And then they never get back to you. And then by the delay and then not getting back to you, they say, well, time has gone by where you haven't been compliant. Now we're going to come after you. It's correct in a sense.
You're correct. And let me give you an example of that. All right. So here it is. This is freaking weird. Okay. Coinbase is actively with a board. What they're doing is they're allowing this board to see if it meets all the different guidelines that are being proposed by the SEC right now. So the Howey test is critical to see if these coins are in fact securities, right? As per the SEC. I think their guidelines are freaking archaic. They were done 100 years ago, and I don't think they apply to cryptocurrency for the most part.
They don't, and that's the point, which is you're using a set of old standards that don't apply to the new standards or the new technology. Mm-hmm. So, give you an example, Europe right now, the UK just came out with a set of guidelines, or they're about ready to come out with a set of guidelines that says, here's what's an asset, here's what's a security, and here's a definition of everything in between. How are you supposed to know how to operate your business if they're not telling you how you can operate your business? And by them delaying you not to operate your business, they then use that to come back at you. It's completely crazy. So what the U.S. wants to do, or what the U.S. is trying to do right now, is a really good comparison is, remember with all the foreclosures and short sales that we had across the United States, but in Vegas in like 2010, 2011. So we had all these foreclosures that were occurring, and the state of Nevada said, we need to do something to stop this onslaught. So we can't tell banks that they can't foreclose because they have that right. But what we can do is we can enact a new law that basically forces their hand to where they can't foreclose and they have to do the other option, which is a short sale. So just so people kind of understand, when you have 85% of the homes that are underwater in a market, that means that the mortgage on it is more than what the house is worth. Correct?
Yeah.
So these people weren't making their mortgage payments, so the banks foreclosed on it. Well, there's only two ways to deal with that situation. One is you foreclose on them. The other one, which is a short sale, which is basically you work with the owners of the home and you work to sell it at a less property, but it's not the same thing as a foreclosure. And because the banks were just full speed ahead, the state of Nevada stepped in and said, we're not saying that you can't foreclose, but what we're doing is setting up a bunch of laws so that it forces your hand to where you basically can't foreclose. You have to then do the short sale. So that's basically what America's doing right now. It's a long-winded version of it, but that's basically what we're doing right now is we're basically finding the ways and the reasons and saying, well, we're not saying you can't do business here with cryptocurrency, but what we can do is basically force your hand in every single direction so that you can't do business here.
Right. And that's what Coinbase has pretty much been trying to do. And we're going back to that board. So the board now has been set up so that way they can see that the Howey test doesn't apply. Okay. Mm-hmm. So then they have been approving these coins or disapproving coins to go on their exchanges. They're documenting the crap out of this, and they're ready to go in case there's a problem, because the SEC is dragging their feet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That being said, now with this new freaking lawsuit against everybody, they're using those type of tactics against them, saying that even in their notes, they are allowing certain coins that shouldn't have been, because per your notes, you shouldn't have allowed it because some of your members weren't exactly hip with it, but you guys let it go anyway. And here's the problem. It's inability to do banking currently, okay? The banks now that used to support, and we've had a podcast on that, Silvergate and the like. They used to support them, have been shut down. But now with this type of legislation, even other banks that we, for example, use, like let's say Bank of America, sending over our money to buy cryptocurrency, even some of those banks right now are starting to backpedal. So I think the banking system is, one day we're going to get up And it's going to be that bankers are no longer allowing, you're going to get a window for anyone to be able to dollar cost average. That's a lot of people do that, or even buy crypto through banking. And that is going to be a freaking travesty, my opinion.
I 100% agree. That's exactly what they're going to do. You're going to have a limited time to get your crypto and to hold it and store it on a ledger or whatever you need to. I'm not saying you won't be able to buy Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies after that, but it's going to be very, very difficult, I think.
Yeah.
Let me give an example right now. MoonPay. You know what MoonPay is? If you go to Trust Wallet or MetaMask and you want to buy crypto directly from there, you can pay. One of the third-party services that allows you to buy it is MoonPay. I go to purchase some the other night. I wanted to buy some Ethereum so I could facilitate one to another on my MetaMask, and you need Ethereum gas to do that. I go to buy some. I bring up MoonPay, fill everything out I need to, put in my banking information, and then I get a rejection. And so I called my bank, and they said, basically, it's Chase Bank. And they said, sorry, we don't allow people to buy crypto. I said, this isn't a credit card. This is my debit card. This is my money. They won't allow me to buy crypto with it.
Yeah, and that's
absolutely insane. My money that I earned. I said, but this is my money. You're telling me how I can spend my money? And they basically didn't have an answer. I mean,
Well, here's the thing. There's a saying in Spanish, and it's like this. It says, no puede cubrir el sol con el dedo. And what that basically means is you can't cover the sun with your thumb, right? You can cover it here, but that's what they're trying to do. So we have a technology right now, Brett, that is unstoppable. Okay, all they can do is make it so it's inconvenient for the masses, which will bring down the value of a bunch of these coins and will destroy the ones that are just starting. So they're really messing with innovation. I mean, the United States is unbelievably unmatched by bringing new things to market, from the VHS to Bitcoin, right?
We always have been.
Right.
That's
But every time we get to a certain level, they end up doing something that has to take it offshore. I mean, everything's been taken offshore. So I think what the end result is going to be is you're going to have a lot of these geniuses that are in this space having to get out of the US. And now they're going to invent other ways for the US citizenry to be able to buy those, just like they did when they did prohibition with alcohol, or they did when the coin, the gold coin, was made illegal.
You know, we in regards to that, we need to learn our lesson. And we will learn our lesson. That's the sad part about it. Is it's going to take us to start getting kicked in the teeth with understanding that the rest of the world's coming around the corner for us to really understand that we need to embrace it. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, the problem is this, is all the technology in the past, I understand that there's hiccups that get in the way and things get delayed, and sometimes we embrace it more than other things, but things eventually move on. The huge problem right now is this technology is messing with the US dollar. And we're the strongest currency and the strongest superpower in the world. That's the one thing that we have and we hold over everybody is our dollar and our military, which backs up our dollar, if you ask me.
Collects for our dollar anyway.
Yeah, basically the military collects for our dollar. That's a very good example. The military collects for our dollar. But regardless, forgot what I was saying.
So here, to bring it around full circle, what you're saying is that we as a country have the strongest currency, and these bankers are nervous that the dollar is going to be
because I don't see, it's not the tech sector that really has a problem with it. It's the banking and the Fed and the SEC, which, are together in a sense. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying is this technology is different this time because this technology is trying to undermine, or in the government's mind, undermines our stability as a country. Name me another technology, VHS or CDs or anything that's came about in the past that that's messed with the US money supply. Nothing. And that's what's so scary to them. They don't know what to do, to be honest with you. They don't know what to do.
Well, what to do? There's a question. The simple answer is leave it alone. That's a simple answer.
And then here's the thing too, which is why are we even talking about this in the first place as far as being a real scenario? And it's because of the other things that we've talked about, which is things like BRICS and other countries wanting to become even more part of it. Why don't you tell people quickly a little bit about BRICS, what it is?
A organization that came about to be able to trade goods and services through the very asset-rich countries, to be able to trade their currencies between each other because of what they see happening to the dollar. Okay, so they want to make sure that they have a place to be able to trade goods for currency. That's that simple.
That isn't based on the US dollar.
No.
A first world country like Russia, but has a dirty connotation to it because of the wars that go on there and kind of how Putin runs things. So you may consider Russia a first world country, but it kind of has a dirty connotation to it as far as the rest of first world doesn't, they may be doing a few things that the rest of the first worlds disagree with. Let's put it that way. And then you've got China, which has their own restraints. They've wanted to be inclusive for all these years, and now they're finally understanding that being global works for them. But regardless, a communist nation. You've got India, which is
socialist,
by and large a third world country in a lot of respects. You've got South America, and then Brazil. So these countries want to have a platform where they can do trades within themselves and not have to be contingent on the US dollar. And that's the important thing, is to not be contingent on the US dollar. And the more people and the more countries that can find a way to facilitate their business and keep their values going without having to use the US dollar, they are going to. And we were just talking about before how now France is interested in joining BRICS. So now we're going to start having Europe.
Well, not all of Europe.
It's the start.
France has a very interesting president right now that is not really supported by the population.
Don't get me started with France, bro.
I know it.
We cut that out.
Yeah, France is blowing it big time. I mean, they are a very powerful country, very considered to be one of the powerhouses.
G8.
Nuclear.
They're in a G8,
country.
right?
Yeah,
they're
a great country. But at the end of the day, now they're saying they want to get in there. And what it is these countries are just, understandably so, trying to become independent from anybody, not just the dollar. I think it's anybody. So I understand what they're doing. I don't think it's going to work because at the end of the day, the problem will be their currency. See, I think no matter what, their currencies are all those aforementioned countries that are in the BRICS system, they're not reliable currencies. Not in my opinion, not at all.
You're right. And that's the thing, which is they're not only not reliable currencies, but they're all underlying currencies of the US dollar. So if you were BRICS, or you wanted to be part of BRICS, or you wanted some semblance of independence, it would behoove you to buy Bitcoin and own Bitcoin, because that truly does make nations sovereign and independent.
Right. Well, let's break that down for a second. The reason the currencies of the world, including the dollar, are malfeasant currencies is because man has the ability to print, period. And so all these fiat currencies throughout time have failed. And I think the dollar was on the verge of failure in 2019. That's my opinion.
2019?
I think with the repo market that was basically starting to trade into the trillions, which is the money that is done between banks. They call it the repo market. They borrow.
They borrow
day.
from each other
Yeah.
to settle their accounts for the night so they can keep their business going.
Exactly. It started at 100,000, 120,000 on average and went to billions. And then what ended up happening because of COVID, then they got a breather, okay? Because they weren't going to go through another type of panic, okay, which is the banking system. So things happened. We don't have to go into that detail, but at the end of the day, what we have is a system that is horrific, that has impoverished a lot of the world, because if a certain group has the ability to print into infinitum, then what happens is the other people that don't have the ability to do that, then they don't benefit. That's why BRICS is trying to get out of it, is because they don't have that ability to print like the U.S. does and some of the other higher rated nations do. But at the end, I see the use case for Bitcoin is, I think, unstoppable. Okay, I think more and more countries, more and more people are going to see that it's a really good store of value, and it's not something that could be printed into infinitum in the whole bit. What say you?
All that takes for Bitcoin to succeed or keep succeeding is belief. And people keep believing it, as in the store of value of it, correct?
Right.
So the more that countries can benefit and get value from that, the more they're going to do it. And like you said before, people need to understand that America, here's why other countries don't want to be dependent on America. Not only are we bullies and we go around and impose our will, and other countries, by and large, for the most part, or at least many times, have suffered from that. We don't care, right? We get what we want, just like every top dog is. What's the golden rule? He with the most gold rules. So it's the same thing. But people need to understand that if the United States just hits the print button, we're all good. If Venezuela hits the print button, they go bankrupt. That's the difference. So knowing that you're always in that underlying secondary, third, fourth position with your currency, and the top dog can always impose their will on you, you're going to have a lot of momentum to find alternative ways. And the more that people embrace Bitcoin and accept it as a store of value, the more they're going to understand the value of it, and the more valuable it's going to become. And like I said, I think it's the ultimate sovereignty.
Well, I mean, you bring up good points. Here's the problem. The dollar is going to crash. Period. End of story. When is it going to crash is on the banker's mind. Now, you said earlier that the bankers are really not getting into the game because it's really the SEC and the banks. I will tell you, if you look at, for example, Goldman Sachs employees are going back and forth between government, okay, and the U.S. Janet Yellen is sitting in government at the moment. She was an ex-chairwoman for the Federal Reserve, right? And I can give you 1,000 examples of how governments are going back and forth with the public sector. So to say that the banks are not in it, well, I don't know if I'd say that. I think the banks are in it.
Well,
into a very high degree, they're in it.
Why do you think the expression "draining a swamp" made sense? I'm just saying, that's exactly what the swamp that they're talking about, whether you're Republican or Democrat. I think we can all agree that these politicians are staying in there far too long and they have no motivation to get out. Their only motivation is to get reelected again and again and again, and then switch over to this department or that department. But it's the same people doing the same things.
Well, I think we're both seeing eye on that one. Now, here to bring it full circle, what we're seeing now is an effort that may or may not work in the US. Will they get rid of crypto in the US? No, I don't think they will. Will they make it very difficult for anyone to be able to hold crypto? Yes. As a matter of fact, I think that is the end game for the banks. They want to be basically the holder of or the exchanges of crypto. That's what I think their end game is.
So what are your thoughts on, because we're going down that road for sure. 100% agree with you. But we're going to go down that road and then we're going to finally understand after getting our heads beat against the wall enough times that we need to get on board eventually. When do you think that's going to happen? Number one. And do you think it's going to happen? And then kind of commentary on that with those questions, which is I do agree with you that, I shouldn't say agree with you, but I do think that ultimately at the end of the day, crypto is going to have to team up with banks and vice versa. And that's just the way it's going to have to be. I think that both are going to come to a head where there needs to be somebody who can bridge that gap between the two and be willing to have both sides say, we're willing to have this person or this group bridge the gap so that we can work together ultimately, because they're going to need to. I mean, they're coming against a head right now. They're butting up against each other, and the best policy to me is for them to work together in some shape or form. It's just and honestly, I think not honestly, I know Coinbase and other exchanges have tried doing that, and it's been a one-sided thing with the government right now with refusal. So it's in the government's best interest. It's in crypto's best interest. That's the best route to take, but it's not heading that way right now. So do you think that they will eventually realize and win?
They've already passed legislation that allows banks to do custodial for cryptocurrency. Done deal. Been that way for a couple of years now. So they may. I think everything's being held up because they don't want, for example, the money that goes to from pension plans, right? That's going towards the stock market today. They don't want it to go towards cryptocurrencies, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that, because the second that there's proper guidance and laws put in place,
yeah,
think about that. So once there's a clear guidance set and there's laws in place, you're right. All of these different portfolios are gonna just be completely spun around and changed around, and there's for every winner there's a loser.
When you're dealing with honesty, a very important background to Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin helping other people have honest money, honest way to do commerce, where we don't have an honest system, and nor does anyone in the world right now have an honest system. Okay.
There's no government currency right now that exists that's backed by gold. None. Okay. It's the first time in history.
That was an honest system with gold that was backed. Mm-hmm. You cannot right now fight a war in Ukraine, for example, what they're doing, or you can't back it if it was a gold-based system or a Bitcoin-based system. And the reason is both are finite. They're printing all this money, right, that is being earmarked to go where? To go to Ukraine. For whatever reasons they have, this politically correct reason they have to go to Ukraine, Fine, whatever the reason is. My point isn't whether I'm for or against Ukraine. My point is, you're not going to cart over what we spent over $100 billion already in Ukraine, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to cart over $100 billion in gold bars to Ukraine. The citizens of this United States would not allow it. Yeah. They would protest. They would be there on the boats. They wouldn't allow it.
Well,
but yet they have no problem sending digital dollars over there, all right, credits on a screen, to fight a war that isn't even ours.
Well, Bitcoin is honesty. Bitcoin is integrity. Bitcoin keeps you in check. It keeps our monetary system in check, because every government or every civilization, let's take the Romans for an example, and I think I've spoke about this in the past. The Romans used to be the greatest, most powerful civilization in the world because they had the greatest army. Their soldiers were paid in gold coins, pure gold coins. Their soldiers were probably the highest paid civilians that were in the Roman population. They got treated like gods. They got treated very, very well. Because of that, they were able to keep the best soldiers and keep on conquering lands and doing everything else. The problem is that's how they started out. And then they started creating more wars. And then they needed to pay for these wars. And then they need to pay for this. And then they need to pay for that. And all these things that it takes to run a civilization was way more than the actual gold that they were collecting when they were raiding other places or in wars or whatever it was. So because of wars and because of power and all these other things, people can't spend within the means that are backed up by gold. So then what you have over a couple hundred years is now the Roman soldiers don't have pure gold coins. The coins that they're getting paid in are half gold and half copper. And then another 100 years go by, and now these soldiers have a quarter gold and 3/4 copper on their coin, to the point where the coins that they're getting paid are basically worthless because there's no more gold in them. And so now you start seeing the shift, and that was basically one of the leading causes to the downfall of Rome, which is them devaluing their money and devaluing their currency. And that's what every civilization since the beginning of time has done. And Bitcoin is monetary policy put in computer code. So yes, there's a market. And as long as there's market and there's people and there's buyers and sellers, it's going to be manipulated. And it's working itself out. As weird as that say, but at the end of the day, what you can never do, you can never make more than 21 million Bitcoin. You can never make more supply than 21 million Bitcoin, period.
Yeah, I agree with that. But in that, I think what you're trying to say is gold in the Roman times had something called scarcity.
Yes, that's the point. I'm sorry. So let me explain that a little more. That's what Bitcoin represents, is scarcity. When people talk about hard money, that's what they mean. Hard money. If money can just be printed at a whim, what value does it have? Humans, by nature, human nature does not respect things that are cheap, and humans do not respect things that are free. We only respect things that are hard to get and are scarce, which Bitcoin is. And the monetary policy that's within that computer code ensures that it stays scarce. The reason why gold is so important and any currency being backed by gold is because it is scarce. Gold is hard to produce and it's expensive to produce, and you just can't find it anywhere. Those ensure the values of hard money. So as long as you have some sort of currency that's backed by that, you're good to go. And everybody respects that. But the Roman soldiers at the end knew that their money was not backed by anything. That's why they left.
Yeah. You know, when I say honest, I mean, here's the thing. Have we been honest? One of the things that bothers me about politicians is you can have a guy that comes off the street, right? He makes 100,000, 200,000 working wherever he was working. Then all of a sudden, 20 years later, the guy's a multi-millionaire on a government salary. And that defines what I'm talking about. Because they have privileged inside information, which is legal, that the SEC even puts people like Martha Stewart in jail for right?
Over $10,000.
Yeah,
So people don't know that. She went to jail over a trade of $10,000.
Yeah, which is absolutely freaking insane. They made her an example.
Yes.
Okay, and that bothers me. Not because I'm a Martha fan.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure.
All right.
Right.
Hey.
I think we have some of her drapes somewhere. I don't
There
know.
you go.
Yeah, but it's because I was disgusted of the hypocrisy. They're making her a poster child, right? Because of something that they do. I mean, I heard a rumor, I don't know how true, that Gary Gensler is in some hot water right now because he's put in a $2.1 million short on Bitcoin. How true that is, I don't know. And I want to be clear, I don't know. But Pelosi, for example, she has a better track record of picking stocks than Warren Buffett does. Her and her husband, right?
Yeah.
So, not that I'm dogging these people, because I guarantee you put in 10 men, 10 women, 9 of them will end up doing the same things to enrich themselves.
So that's the problem, though. I 100% agree with you. In fact, I'll be honest with you. I would probably be one of those 9 out of 10 people. But that's the problem. We're human. I'm human. Humans are built a certain way. We can't help ourselves. But you know what prevents us from acting in certain ways? A machine. And in a sense, that's what Bitcoin is. It's a machine that encapsulates monetary policy. So it doesn't allow you to, because humans, why do you think we've done this since the beginning of time? Dude, we'll do it till the end of time. So sometimes you need to bring in a machine to stop that, because a machine won't allow you to. And that's the way that I look at Bitcoin, because you're exactly right. These people get into politics and they come in there making $100,000. Why do they want to keep on getting reelected? They're only making $150,000 a year because every year they make tens of millions more. So you go into something with $100,000, $150,000 a year, and 10, 15 years later, you're worth 50 million, 60 million, 70 million.
I like the machine idea you're saying. Although I think there's a case to be made for laws. And I'll give you an example. If they were to do term limits, okay, that would really help. I mean, you got term limits for presidents, you got term limits.
But
right?
the problem is, they're the ones determining that. Like, term limits is not a new idea, and everybody agrees upon that. Why haven't they enacted term limits ever? The idea has been around forever. Why not? Because it would take them to vote themselves to do that. So, which is like, let's go back to our Constitution. Almost like our founding fathers were wise people. They said the term limits for a president is 2 because they knew.
Right. Well, there's term limits. That's one idea. The other one is put a gag order, and there's a specific law, which I don't know exactly what it is, but where they cannot use any of the information to enrich themselves. There's a name for it. Don't know. So, for example, Nancy goes into a meeting, right? She cannot walk out of that meeting with that inside information and give it to her husband, and her husband turns around and buys the stock that she knows just got approved for XYZ, right? So whatever that's called, and a lot of the listeners will know, we got to get a rule for that.
There already is. That's the problem.
No, there isn't.
Yes, there is.
It's totally legal for Nancy or any politician that's inside a room that allows for whatever, as long he can or she can enrich themselves over that information. No problem. That's why Nancy's still around and able to do it. And not just her, but all of these guys are doing it, right? Because it's legal. The moment you make it illegal, now things will start to change. The moment you...
The idea of them having term limits has been around forever, and they've never done it. Why do you think that is? Is it a hard thing to do? No, you just have to vote on it. Mm-hmm. Why hasn't it been done? But any industry that exists doesn't want it. Or I should say, they don't see it. So any industry that gets changed, in a sense, has to be from the outside, right?
Yep.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just telling you what the symptoms are, okay? What the possible solution is. And you're saying that what we all know is it ain't going to change.
So we need,
Bitcoin, let me go there.
Sorry.
So Bitcoin is the solution. And maybe it's not Bitcoin. Hold on, let me be clear here. Maybe it's not Bitcoin that they'll use, right? Maybe it's not. Bitcoin's going nowhere. But maybe it's a decentralized, limited function for currencies that will be the ticket that can't be changed or altered, that will change everything in the future. Who knows? I can't speculate because I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do see the white paper for Bitcoin, and I do see the possibilities of honesty, and I am impressed. That's it. I'm not impressed with this cronyism that's going on right now.
I'm saying they're crooked. I'm saying every last one of them are crooked. You know, straight up. I don't mind saying that. And not only are they crooked, but they're going to continue on doing what they do until they can't anymore. And that's with anything in life, right? So they're going to continue on their ways and what they do until they can't anymore. And when they can't anymore, that's going to take the outside. But, you know, I look at it as this is the game. I don't blame them for playing the game. Be honest with you, I think most people, if they were in that situation, would play the game too, because they don't look at it as a perspective outside of themselves. So even if you know perspectives outside of yourself, you don't really understand that. It doesn't really sink in, you know? So regardless, it is what it is. And they're always going to continue on. And the game that they play is always going to continue on until you have something honest like Bitcoin step into the scene. And it's a checkmate.
You know what? I'm glad we're having this discussion because the truth is we're 100% on point. We got a very sick puppy on our hands with our money system situation worldwide. And the only way it's going to get better is if we bring in, like you're saying, an outside force like Bitcoin that would be adopted by the people to be able to do commerce. The problem with that for the bankers is if I don't need a banker anymore, I don't need to give them my money. I can do self-custody of my own money. I can trade. If I want to buy something from you, I can just send you over my Bitcoin. You get me the product, and we bypass the middleman and all those crazy fees that they charge. They're in trouble, dude.
I mean, people need to understand you can still have loans. You can still get mortgages and lend out money and all that stuff. That even though you're not hitting the print button, there can still be loans, there can still be mortgages, there can be all these things. Because I mean, you know, that's what makes a country grow. People need to understand that is part of what keeps third world countries down is they have no banks. Buy something like that, or even to get a car so you can go to a job, or even to buy more seeds so I can double my crop size. Things like that you can't do. So people need to understand the importance of a bank and the importance of being able to lend.
So, yeah, but you don't need a bank to be able to lend.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to say. But you don't need a bank to lend.
Right. Well, here's something to answer to a couple guys that I'm reading in their minds right now in our audience. And that is, how can you use 21 million?
Because you divide them up to a bunch of Satoshis.
Yeah. And that's it. Every Bitcoin has 100 million Satoshi. So that means that's 21 trillion.
Yes, that's what people need to. Yeah, I have people ask me that all the time.
And then the value of that. So let's say that every Satoshi now is worth $1. That's enough money to run the whole of the world, right? No problem. Not based on our inflated, jacked up money that we have right now, but on real exchanges, there's enough of the 21 million and then some to be able to manage any economy worldwide.
It does make it scarce. There are only, it's broken up to 100 million Satoshis, and that's out of 21 million Bitcoin. So that's a lot. But even that has a certain cap.
All right, let's have some fun. Let me have some fun. All right, here we are. You ready?
Yep.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Go for it.
So I want
B.
you to.
Oh,
All right, here we go. What is your prediction for the value of Bitcoin in 2 years from now? Today is June 14th.
so what are we talking? 220,
2020,
225. We will be in a bull market. I don't know if we'll be in the middle, beginning or end of it, but we'll be in a bull market.
So, and you're saying the Bitcoin would be how much?
I mean,
That's
I'm
not a
horrible at this.
number.
I
Come
mean,
on. You got it. We're having fun.
100,000. Ultimately, though, I do want to say this. Ultimately, the end game is I see in 21 million Bitcoin being equivalent to all the money system, the M2 money supply that exists in the world. Take whatever trillions of dollars that is and divide it by 21 million, and that's what each one Bitcoin will be worth.
Okay. All right. Well, we got you live right now. So
Don't hold me to it.
you're held.
Don't worry,
My
the internet
prediction-
persecute me anyways.
My prediction, here it is, 250,000, same time.
Really?
Yep. Thanks for coming on. Great show. Hasta la vista, baby.
Peace.